Welcome to another episode of our personal empowerment premium audio series, Finding Yourself in Paradise. Hi, I'm Michael Benner.
And I'm Steve Snyder, and our program today is about what happens in all self-improvement processes. We hit these peaks and we hit these plateaus. Today's show, what to do when you hit the peak and how to overcome the plateaus.
Unfortunately, most of us have been educated or trained to think of life as a plateau. Like you get out of school, you get a job, hopefully a career. And while there is admittedly some growth within that, the rest of your life tends to be pretty much a plateau. You peak, you're excited, oh boy, here I am, successful. But are you really satisfied with the gentle increase in that plateau? Or would you like another peak experience? Even if it were followed by a plateau and that process unfolded, well, it's really unlikely that much of that is going to happen in our lives unless and until we promote it. We really have to choose the peak experiences that we aim for, know that they'll be followed by restful periods of expansion and gentle growth. That's the plateau part. But part of it is you got to prepare for the next peak. And in that way, life unfolds.
Yeah, whatever it is you wish to become the best you can be at. And the good news, of course, is you can be the best you can be at anything. You just can't be the best you can be at everything because there's not enough time. But you could be the best you can be at anything. I mean, if you want to be world class at something, it's really a tremendous advantage to begin in early childhood and start practicing when you're young. But you can be the best you can be at anything, and the process is pretty much the same. You know, you learn the fundamentals. If you know them, if you're a natural, well, good for you. That's wonderful. Otherwise, you find a mentor, a coach. In golf, you'd find a golf pro, and you learn the fundamentals, and then you practice and you release what doesn't work. One of the cool things about practice is there's no negative ramifications for, like in golf, a bad shot or a bad performance. So you release what doesn't work by going, I'm glad I got that out of my system. Whenever you practice something and it doesn't work and you like hit a bad shot or do something wrong, you go, because simply stated, if you don't like hitting bad shots in practice, if you don't like making mistakes in practice, then you won't like practicing enough to practice enough to get to be the best you can be. So you enjoy your bad shots because nothing bad's going to happen. In fact, you have more opportunity to learn from the bad shots than you do the good shots. You can learn more from the mistakes than the successes. So when you hit a bad shot or make a mistake, hit the wrong note when you're practicing your guitar or whatever, you go, And then when you hit the right note or you hit a great shot, you close your eyes, you go to your peaceful place, and you imagine that same great shot over and over and over and over again, so that every great shot becomes a bunch of great shots, a dozen great shots, or 20 great shots. And so you'll start getting better. You practice, you release what doesn't work, you reinforce what does work, and you'll start getting better. But at some point, you'll hit that dreaded plateau. And when you hit the plateau, what happens is you're practicing, you're doing everything that you were doing that caused you to get better and better, but now you're not getting better, or you're getting so much more slowly better that it doesn't seem like you're getting better. And it's not enough. You want more. Well, what do you do when you hit that plateau? And this is really the key, because what most people do when they hit the plateau is what causes most people to never become the best they could be. Most people, when they hit the plateau, they do one of three things. They either quit. They go, well, I guess this is not my thing. Golf's not my game, or guitar's not my instrument. I'll go try something else. Well, you'll never get to be the best you can be that way. Or they get stressed about it. I mean, like they're practicing, and not getting any better, and it gets all frustrating. And of course, that will cause performance to degrade very quickly. Performance degrades very quickly when you get hyper-stressed. And then finally, and really most common, what most people do when they hit that plateau, and they're practicing, but nothing's happening, they just settle. They go, well, I guess I guess I'm good enough to go play golf with my friends now. I don't need to practice on the driving. I don't need to practice guitar. I can play those songs. I don't need to practice anymore. It's not doing me any good. I'll just go perform. Well, that's fine, but you've just set the upper limits of how good a performer you'll ever be, because you don't get better by performing. You only get better by practicing. When you perform at the level you're at. You don't attempt to be better than you are, because then you make mistakes, and that's not a good thing when you're performing. But when you're practicing, it's okay to make mistakes. You learn from them and you grow from them. So when you hit the plateau, instead of getting stressed or quitting or settling, what you do is you keep practicing, but you ask yourself, what do I need to change? What do I need to aim for? What's my next peak that I want to shoot for? And what do I need to do to move in that direction? You ask yourself, what do I need to change? And you listen for the answer, because the answer is going to come from inside of you, from your intuition.
That's a really nice outline to distinguish clearly, as you've just done, Steve, the difference between practice and performance. And it's interesting because part of the value of practice is making your performance well integrated, almost automatic. You mentioned playing guitar. That certainly is one of the skills I've worked at my entire life. And there are times I sit down and hold the instrument and it feels like so awkward and wrong and odd-shaped. Even a guitar I've owned, for many, many years, it's me. It's just my attitude. It's, I don't know, the alignment of the stars on that day. And the best I can do is practice a few exercises and put it down. But then there are other days when you pick it up and it feels like it's part of you. And you're not playing upon the instrument. You're expressing through the instrument. You, your arms, your fingertips, your eyes, and the instrument itself, all part of one thing, one instrument, if you will. And it feels so natural and so normal. And you're playing, as musicians sometimes say, or athletes use the same phrase, you're playing out of your mind. You just don't use the deliberate nature of your mind. It's so automatic. But we want you to consider that that's a place to begin to plan new challenges for yourself, to go to that next peak experience. There's several ideas we want to go over with you, like in nature, a process called punctuated evolution. In philosophy, there is an idea of the ring past knot that we want to talk about briefly. I'm a big fan of Hegel. I like Hegel's dialectic, the idea that we start with a thesis. That'd be the plateau, if you will. That's what we all know to be true and where we're at and what we're comfortable doing. But out of that evolves something different. Maybe so different, it's even opposite in some sense. And we call that the antithesis or the antithesis, the opposite, right? And then there's tension and a struggle between the two because they're different and, again, at times may even appear to be directly opposite. But Hegel says from that comes a third element called the synthesis. And you can almost hear the trumpets, da-da, and now you're at this new peak. And yet, after a while, it becomes the plateau with, as Steve said, a little bit of growth, some general, gentle growth and expansion to it. But it's not until that brand new synthesis becomes a thesis that the process then repeats. And Hegel said, all understanding and the world, evolution, everything about the way we grow physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, is akin to this process, a concept that gives rise to an exception, and the tension or antagonism between the two gives rise to a whole new concept, a synthesis, which becomes the new thesis, and so the process then is repeated around and around.
So that's what it really takes to break out of a plateau, is to see something different, that you can now create tension. Like, this is the comfort zone. This is the way it is. Now I've got this dream of something better than that. And all of a sudden, the dream and the reality that what I have now don't fit. And there's a tension there. So what I have to do is use that thesis and that antithesis now as an energy creator to create whatever it is I need to do right now, whatever it is I need to change. I create a synthesis out of that to do something different, to do something new, to add something to my game, to my performance, to my repertoire. or I'm a golfer and I'm stuck in this plateau, and I'm hitting the ball about the same distance. I'm hitting it just about as often in the same direction. I mean, I'm not doing anything much better, much different for quite a while now, and it's time for something to change, because the cool thing is, peaks are wonderful when you hit them, but when you stay at them, they turn into plateaus. They get to be not so great anymore. I mean, when you all of a sudden like do the best you've ever done, and it feels wonderful, it'll feel wonderful for a little while, but after a while, if you keep doing that again and again and again, and there's no obvious improvement, no gratification from getting better, then that peak turns into just another one of those plateaus. So you need to, first of all, you need to envision what's the next step, what's the next thing. And if you're looking for example, in a golf game, you're looking for, what do I need to do to change my swing? What do I need to do? Well, you ask yourself that. You ask yourself, what do I need to change? And you listen for the answer. And even if it doesn't come from inside of you, you've planted the seed in there. The law of attraction is going to take over. And every time you walk down that row of golfers on that driving range, you're going to look at all of them, and one of them, and you're going to, that one over there, what he's doing, that's what I need to do. You're going to be attracted to the answer, whether it comes from you or allows you to see it out there, something you wouldn't have seen before. You're going to be attracted to that answer. So the secret is, take a look at those areas where you want to get better. I mean, you don't have to get better at everything at every moment. You can slide on some things. Okay, I'm good enough right now. I'm good enough in this area of my life. As long as I maintain my eating right and my exercise and doing everything, and then my health's doing good. I don't have to make any major changes in my health. Okay, I got that. And my career, that's going along fine. But my relationship, now there's an area where I've been flat for a while. It's time to take the next leap. What can I do to make my marriage, to the next step? What can I do to create a new peak in my marriage? And all of a sudden, here I am thinking, I've got this marriage I really, really like, and it's like an A- feeling kind of thing. It's wonderful. What can I do to make an A+? And once I start visualizing and imagining that A+, once I start practicing in my mind having an A+ marriage, that creates tension between the reality of what I have and that vision of what I want. And that tension, from that tension comes the synthesis, comes the awareness, comes the obvious thing I need to do next to start moving and get out of the plateau and start climbing to the next peak.
Yeah, there's a concept in psychology and philosophy, sometimes called the law of homeostasis, that says, it's sort of like a mental version of that law of physics, that a body at rest tends to stay on the couch. That if you're happy and doing okay, that it takes a special person to do what Steve's just described, and that's set new goals and deliberately, purposefully look for new challenges, to stretch in order to improve, even if it means some discomfort or a little bit of frustration. But the funny thing about life is, if you settle into that, if you succumb to homeostasis and just settle into wanting everything to be the same, life comes along with a sharp stick and starts poking at you, sort of gently at first, and then if you ignore the prodding, life finds a brick and slugs you over the top of the head, and you go, hey, why me? What is this adversity that promotes growth? Something about life, the universe, God, whatever is your belief in the way the world works, it needs to grow. It needs to expand. And you can do it elegantly, as Steve just described, and that's our whole purpose today, is helping you to be more graceful and, elegant in accelerating purposeful growth. But understand, if you don't do that, life's going to find a sharp stick. And hopefully you'll move before it has to go looking for a big brick. We see this in nature, where adversity promotes something called punctuated evolution. And what this means is, when Darwin looked at the evolution of species, he saw that a particular type of animal or plant would stay the same for long periods of time with only minor changes, a few changes with each generation, but nothing big. And then along would come some sort of crisis or adversity, some environmental challenge, like a period of global warming, where all of a sudden the rain goes away, like maybe people chop down the forest, and so all of a sudden the trees don't cause it to rain there, and it becomes arid. And So as a result, other forms of plants or animals are challenged, and they have to dance or die. They have to grow and change, or they become extinct. And part of the law of natural selection is if you become so overspecialized that you lose your ability to adapt, this goes for humans too, by the way, then this species becomes extinct. It's those that maintain somewhat of a generalist ability to adapt and change that then change. But here's the deal. It's not this gradual, smooth, linear change that you might think of it. It's punctuated like a stair step, this quantum leap. Suddenly, this whole new species emerges. All of a sudden, this cat has spots, and we call it a leopard. All of a sudden, this deer or gazelle begins to evolve, and the neck gets very long to reach those tall trees and the leaves it needs to eat and survive, and we call it a giraffe. That happened pretty much overnight. That's punctuated evolution, like little change, gradual change, moderate change, adversity building, getting more painful, greater challenges, more difficult, in the human sphere, more frightening, and then those that are able to adapt, to grow, make that quantum leap, a new peak, followed by, a plateau, a little gentle rise. You'll continue to grow. But you see, we're not spotted cats, and we're not giraffes, and we're not animals. I mean, in many ways we are, but we're a very special animal with the ability to recognize this process and anticipate it, to plan for it, to adjust for it. And that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, in a species, growth change, quantum change happens virtually overnight, which in terms of species is several thousand years, so that's an overnight. But in terms of a human lifetime, it works the same way. I mean, we go along the same, and then all of a sudden, virtually overnight, which might be a night, which might be a month, which might be a 6-month period, but in a short period of time, we make dramatic transitions. We get married, and we change the way we live our lives, and we see ourselves as part of a couple now, or we create a new career, and all of a sudden, we see ourselves as in this new way, or we become philanthropic, and all of a sudden, we can view ourselves. And we can make huge changes in our lives virtually overnight. But as Michael said, the homeostasis, the likelihood that we're just going to go with the easiest possible way, the likelihood that we're not going to go upstream at all or push against anything it's there. I mean, it's the road to least resistance. It's the easiest way. But it is in our DNA to want us to grow, to want us to change. And that's where those sticks or those bricks come from, At some point inside of our DNA, it's saying, we need to reproduce these genes, and we need them to be the best they can possibly be. So we need to be the healthiest and the strongest and the happiest. And within every single creature, there's this part of the survival of the fittest. And the fittest doesn't mean the strongest necessarily. It means the most adaptable, the one who can grow and change the best. So there's something in our DNA that says, prove that you're one of those ones who can grow and change better than most other people can, so that your DNA will get passed along to future generations. Prove that you can grow and change. Prove that you can adapt. Prove that when adversity strikes, you're one of those people that when you get knocked down, you stand up again. One of those kind of people that chooses to survive, chooses to thrive, chooses to grow. You have the option. There are penalties, but you have the option of coasting. You have the option of just going along with the way it is, so to speak. But you will get those prods, the guilty conscience, the part of the regret, the wanderlust. You're going to get those little messages from your brain that say, no, this isn't the ultimate. The ultimate is to go for it, to grow, to get better and to bigger and stronger and faster and happier and better. So yeah, you can choose to fight that, to ignore that, to stick your head in the sand and pretend it's not there. But deep down in your genes is something that says, if you want to survive, and you do more than anything else, and you want to pass what you are on to others, even if technically you're not going to have children, that's not the point. It's still in your genes to grow, to change, to become an example of survival of the most adaptable.
It's funny, we have a subtitle now. The program is called Peaks and Plateaus, but The subtitle is Sticks and Bricks.
There you go. I like that. Sticks and bricks. That's what you get if you don't peek.
Nice alliteration. You and I have both owned golden retrievers.
I have two right now.
You have two now currently, and two others in the past. I've had a couple of goldens. You know, the very first golden retriever we've been able to trace. We know where the very first golden retriever was born from these other two dogs. A dog called, see if I can remember. One was a Russian Tracker, I think. I don't, a water spaniel, I think, and a Russian.
If we don't know, it's not.
Anyway, it was the guy that bred the very first golden retriever. His name was Lord Tweedmouth, and this was in England in the early 19th century. And in this litter of puppies, there's this one spectacular golden dog, and it looked a lot like a retriever, a flat-coated or curly-coated retriever. And
with sort of an Irish setter coloring.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there you go. That's this quantum leap. And then they worked to create another one, and then they mated them, and all golden retrievers come from that one puppy.
And then what they did was they took those two and found the ones that were most playful or most personality they wanted, and they bred those together. And we actually created the whole thing called dog right from the beginning by putting these things together. I mean, consider the same species has a miniature French poodle and a Great Dane. I mean, it's the same species.
I was going to say a Chihuahua to a Bernese Mountain Dog.
Yeah, it's amazing, the diversity, and yet they're all dog.
They're all
genetically,
wolves.
they're all post-wolf, if you will.
Canine.
And there's something in the understanding that we can actually do that. We can actually breed for color, breed for personality, breed for size. Somewhere inside of us, we're doing that. We're looking for mates that my stuff and your stuff together would make the best stuff. We're genetically programmed to survive and thrive both. So what we're saying is to go with the flow may seem like to take the easy road, but you'll run into those sticks and bricks. It's not the easy road to go with the flow. Sometimes you must stand up and face adversity. Sometimes you must choose to create the adversity. In nature, a plant will change because, as Michael said, global warming or an ice age or the rain changes. The adversity comes and they're forced to change. But sometimes the adversity in our lives don't come. Sometimes we have to make them come. We must choose to step out of our comfort zone, choose to do something more difficult, choose to do something that might even cause a little pain or certainly, some frustration because we're not going to be perfect at it the first time we do it. So it's the choice to grow. It's the choice to go beyond. It's the choice when you've hit that plateau and you're beyond your peak and all that joy you got from hitting the peak is sort of fading now because you've been at this peak for quite a while and it's not really a peak anymore. It seems like normal now. Now's the time to take a deep breath and decide, is this the time to make a great growth change? If not, okay, maybe a month down the road, maybe it's not right time right now, but soon. And find out from yourself, you're the only one that can know the timing. When's the time to take my next quantum leap? What's the time to break out of this ring and aim for a greater one?
You see, to take the risk, to endure the frustration and discomfort that comes with purposeful growth, setting your own peak goals and moving, accelerating your growth through the plateaus to another peak is far better than having to endure the sticks and bricks that nature's going to come along with if you refuse to grow, if you just hold on and stay on the couch. There's a field where religion meets philosophy called theosophy. There's a capital T theosophy, but also a general small t version of theosophy. And it goes back several hundred years. And within that field is this same concept that we're talking about here, only it's referred to as the ring pass net. And it's an understanding that when you have discomfort in your life, when you start feeling sorry for yourself and looking around and saying, why me? Why is all of this coming down on me all at once? All this adversity, all of these trials and all of this suffering. It's a good time to get excited and say, oh boy, maybe I put this off too long. Maybe I could have avoided some of this by planning the peaks and the whole process of unfoldment in my life. But here I am now, so all this adversity is a precursor to something really wonderful. This is the pain that precedes the quantum leap, the big change in my life. And it's never too late to get hip to the fact that you're caught up in this process. Consider the ring pass knot in the classical sense. In other words, what could possibly prompt a baby bird to want to leave the comfort of the egg, where it's got a little capsule of air and food? Well, running out of air and running out of food. And that happens at exactly the right time. Except that for the little baby bird, it's starting to freak out. It can't breathe as well, and it's running out of food, and so it thrashes about and finally breaks out of the shell. But it took the pain and discomfort of running out of air and nourishment before it broke out of its shell and burst through that ring pass knot that was the egg, the shell. But now it's in a slightly larger ring. It's in the nest. And it's safe here, and it's going to be cared for with its siblings by mommy bird and maybe daddy bird, and they go off and get grubs and worms and insects and such until it gets uncomfortable in the nest. The birds are getting bigger, and they're crowding each other out. Whoops, that one fell out of the nest. But look, it learned to fly as a result of being crowded out of the nest. Now it's in a bigger ring where it can fly through the forest from tree to tree. But in a few weeks it's starting to get cold. And here comes the adversity of winter, and now the bird has to burst through another ring pass knot, and it flies south for the winter, for warmer climates. This is just an example in nature of punctuated evolution within a particular lifetime, don't you see? And it's at work in our life, and as you become more conscious of the process, you can anticipate it. You can account for it and adjust for it. You can get out in front of it. You know, like a surfer that gets in front of the wave and with a couple of kicks catches the wave, and now the wave does all the work. No more pedaling, you just surf it all the way in, you see. That's what we're talking about, trying to get you to see, whether it's through Hegel's model or the evolution of natural selection or this idea of the ring pass knot, the benefits of getting with the program. If there is a meaning and a purpose to life, there are many, many people who would suggest it's simply to grow. I know there's all kinds of other choices, and we respect your right to make whatever choice you want to make. But I wonder how many of those choices, when it comes to looking at who am I and why am I here, involve growth. I mean, that's pretty basic. That's pretty central. And the idea that we grow physically to a certain point and at 18 or 20 years old stop, or that we grow in terms of our knowledge and understanding and then leave school and then stop, is wrong. It's anti-life. Life doesn't stop. It continues. And therefore, growth has to be an integral part of living. And if you don't feel like you're living fully and completely, take a look at setting some new peaks. Even though they'll be followed by plateaus, now you're beginning to look at the whole process unfold.
So if I got to keep getting better, when's the satisfaction? You know, when do I get to like pull over and just like be fulfilled and like be done and rest and you know, enjoy the benefits of the rewards of all this hard work? Well, along the way is the answer. There's no final destination that says I'm done now until your heart stops beating. Along the way, you do get to pull over and like bask in the glory of the peak you just reached. You don't have to keep growing every minute of every day. What we're saying is that the rest you get, the satisfaction you get with life, you get along the way in life. You don't like aim for that to be a final destination. Like one day I'll have everything done and I'll be satisfied. It doesn't work that way. I'm aiming for this next peak. I've accomplished it. Now I can be satisfied for a little while. But after a little while, you'll realize that satisfaction is a sort of like nebulous kind of thing. It sort of feels good for a little while, but after a while, what was satisfying isn't all that satisfying anymore. I mean, when you haven't eaten in a long time, that cheeseburger is wonderful, maybe, but if after a while it's only cheeseburgers, it gets to be, So there comes a time to be satisfied. There comes a time to take some of your retirement along the way, some of your vacation time, so to speak, some of your, I'm going to opt out from growing right now and just sort of coast and enjoy life for a little while. But there also comes times when, you have to realize that it's time to end this plateau thing. I got that stick poking me, or I just know that stick's going to come. So I'm going to aim for the next thing. I'm going to go for the next thing. And I know it's going to be tough. I know I'm going to have some failures along the way. I know I'm going to have some, frustration and maybe even some sadness and anger. Who knows? But what I also know is that I'm going to come out the other side of this better, stronger, happier, more powerful, and more fulfilled. So that's the whole process. It's like, it's not about always getting better. It's not about growing at the same speed your whole life. It's not. There's going to be periods of rest, and then there's going to be periods of quantum growth, when you just like put it all together and make that big leap. You change careers, or you commit to a relationship, or you decide to become a philanthropist, or even decide to save money for the first time in your life. You decide to do something significantly different that changes your opinion of you, that changes who you are and how you feel about you. Those changes don't have to happen every day. But when they don't happen for a long, long time, then the DNA, the genes inside start to go growling at you and saying, no, you're supposed to grow. You're not supposed to stay the same. You're supposed to grow. You can stay the same for a little while. But after a little while, you're going to realize, no, we need some more adversity. We need to shine ourselves up. We need to push through that egg, or push out of that nest, or push out of that warm climate. We need to fly a little farther, grow a little greater. Because the bottom line of it all is, it really doesn't matter if you get to some destination. What matters is the process of going toward that destination, the growing process of moving in the direction of what your heart and mind both deem is the right place to go. That's the best journey you can have. The process of staying the same feels good for a little while, but what feels best is to grow and then stay the same, and then grow and then stay the same, and do that stair-step kind of thing instead of this, like just flowing down the river.
Yeah, there's times to go with the flow. That's a different model in a different situation. One of the challenges of substituting simple bumper sticker axioms for really deep understanding. I do it myself. I love quotable quotes and little saws and sayings, but the context is everything, What does it mean to go with the flow? That's a very important concept in Taoism, for example, to do what nature does, find the most efficient, the smartest, and the most intelligent way. Why push the river, as the guru would say.
But be careful, if you're going with the flow and the flow's going down the drain, you're going to go down the drain.
So there you go. So in philosophy, there's always a talk about equanimity, about balance in many regards. The balance between materialism and spirituality, for example, is a classic that confronted even the Buddha himself. We live in a material world. We have material concerns. And yet, if we live only in the material world and ignore our spiritual needs, we're going to be out of balance as well. And so you say, well, which is it? And the answer, paradoxically, is both. You want to take a look at the resistance that you have to the bothness of things that are different somehow. The belief that differences tend to be opposites and fight against each other is the conclusion of a stressed mind. And when you go to paradise, this place of narrow awake or focused passion, and you release the physical tension in the body, and you release the belief systems that you've been clinging to, And in a safe and relaxed place, you become more flexible, and you can begin to see where the balance point is. Because rarely is it 50-50. It could be 60-40, it could be 61-39, It could be 90-10 or 15-85. That balance point, that middle so-called, is the whole playing field from that end zone down there to this out-of-bounds end zone over here. The whole swing of the pendulum. These are the possibilities. These are the options available to you, the choices between everything and nothing, between this or that. Work with turning your world from a this or that world to a this and that world by looking at things as relatively true. Well, this is a matter of degree. Well, to a large extent. Well, to a lesser extent. And look for the appropriateness in balance as you set new goals, new peaks for yourself, knowing they'll be followed by a rest period, a period of gliding and cruising and maybe going with the flow a little bit. But don't wait for life to have to use sharp, pointy sticks and bricks to get your attention. Set new goals always in each and every area of your life, in career, in relationships, in service to your community, in your hobbies and interests, the books that you read. Decide that you're an interesting person by being an interested person. There are no boring lives, only boring people who are afraid to discover the best of who they are to themselves, expose yourself to yourself, and then in relationships to other people. So, once again, it all begins with feeling safe. And if you don't feel safe, then deliberately, let's do it now. Go to a safe place where you can begin to, in a receptive sense, examine all of the possibilities before you when you think about growth, new goals, new peaks and plateaus. Close your eyes and take a few slow, deep breaths. Create and sense a letting go feeling. Relax and let muscular tension just fall away.
So take a couple of deep breaths. Fill, hold, and release. And feel that sense of quietude, that sense of peace. Because although we're going to face adversity or challenge, there'll be no stranger. Nothing that we face here is going to bring us any danger. So we can feel safe and free of any need for fear to appear. We can feel safe and free and just be here and be clear. We can feel safe and free and make adversity and challenge no stranger. We can face them with excitement because there's no fear and there's no danger. Relax, feel safe, and know when it's time. You get the signal, you get the message, you'll get the prompt from your mind that says, take another step. Become something more. There's another ring that you need to explore. Step out of your comfort zone. Step out of what's easy and move into something that has potential for growth, something that could be much better than this, something that could bring you ecstasy and bliss. It doesn't really matter if you ever get there or not. Just taking the step, showing what you've got, facing the adversity, and you will find that taking that step changes your mind, and it changes the way you feel about you. You'll love yourself more. Try it. You will. You'll see that you do. Anytime you attempt to make growth or change, anytime you get out of that comfort zone and rearrange something into something different and strange, there's a reward that comes in your self-esteem. Experience it. You'll see what I mean.
You've heard the saying, there is no time like the present. In fact, there is no time but the present. And so decide right now to do something you've always wanted to do, you've dreamed of doing all of your life, but you've been putting it off. Just open your mind, open your heart, and allow now to come forward. Of all the things you'd like to do, of all the new goals and peaks and solutions and wondrous opportunities, one will stand above the rest, almost demand your attention and go, me, over here. Let's do this now. And be the one who simply agrees with a silent, internal, yes, okay, no time but the present. What could we do today? What one little thing could we do a few moments from now when this exercise concludes? Maybe it's go to the internet and Google a web page that you then read, or find a book that will inform you and educate you, or read a biography about someone you admire whose behavior you'd like to emulate. Just one thing today, and tomorrow you can do one more thing, and so it is. You move toward the new peak every day, taking one or more steps in the direction of that new goal, that desired outcome. And there will be some frustration and a little bit of adversity, but it'll be a lot less painful. And to say it in a positive way, much more elegant and graceful than waiting for life to prod you and force you painfully to get off dead center. Spiritual momentum. Create some inertia now. Step forward in your mind's eye. See yourself taking this action step. The first step toward your new peak.
Imagine that first step. Be very clear. Imagine it's now. Imagine it's here. And then project yourself forward and see the goal achieved, the rewards that you get, the change you can believe in you. See the first step, see the goal accomplished, see those two. What do you do next? What's the bullseye? So you know where and you know why. What do I do next? And what's the bullseye? So I know where and so I know why. It's okay to coast a lot of time. But once in a while, before those sticks come in your mind, before that prodding begins, take a chance. Face some adversity. Intentionally advance. Go beyond your comfort zone. Set a greater peak. Do what it takes to get there, even as we speak. Every day, one thing or more. Every day, have in store the next step to take, and maybe another one too. Every day, do what you need to do until you reach that peak. And then you can stay for a little while, coasting in this wonderful way, and then the next peak will come, and you'll find that your mind will always remind you when those peaks are due. You'll feel a sense of complacency. You'll feel uncomfortable. Your mind will say, there's something more. We need more to do. And when that comes, instead of pushing it back, instead of hiding from the fact, tune in and see where you can change your reality. Is it your career or your relationship or your hobbies or health or the way you deal with money and wealth? What's something significant that you can do to change the way that you view you?
So commit yourself now to this intention to move forward toward a new result, a new peak. And bring it with you gently and effortlessly as you reorient yourself in your mind's eye to what you'll see in a moment with your physical eye. Remember the room around you and take a nice, slow, deep breath. Hold as you peak. And now, as you exhale, open your eyes wide awake, alert, rested, refreshed, back in the room, committed to a whole new goal and a new growth step in your life. Well, more than a step, a whole process, but it begins with a single step, right? Feeling better than before.
Yeah, that's what it's about. You can feel the same as before for a while, but at some point, it's the same as before didn't feel as good as it used to feel, and it's time to take a next step. You'll know when it is. Just tune into yourself, tune into your intuition. It'll let you know when the right time to do it. And the most important thing to know is that you don't have to wait for those sticks and bricks. You don't have to wait for that regret, remorse, that shame, that embarrassment, that feeling of like I'm not doing it right. You don't have to wait for that. You can anticipate that coming. I've been coasting for a while now. I know it's coming. Now I'm going to take my next step. And part of what that takes is to have the wisdom, the emotional intelligence to know this is the right time. And if you want to know more about emotional intelligence, you might go to the new YouTube Michael's got on emotional intelligence. Go to YouTube, TEDx Michael Benner, and you can see that. Or I've got one on that state you need to be in, narrow awake. Go to YouTube and TEDx Steve Snyder, and you can see these wonderful little TEDx presentations Michael and I recently did as well.
TED Talk is very cool. Listen, I got an idea I want to leave you with, too. If you're sort of stuck, like you got a number of things that you'd like to set as new goals and you don't know which one to emphasize, or maybe you just sort of came up blank, use Stumble Upon. I've just started playing with this on the internet. It's been around for quite a while, and it's really cool. It's different than a Google search because if you search an area of interest on Google, you'll get page after page after page, but if you did the same search for the same terms a week later, you'll get all those same pages. But when you sign up for Stumble Upon, we don't have anything personally to do with this website. You go to stumbleupon.com and then sign up for free. It allows you to enter areas of interest, and then when you click the Stumble Upon button, it's sort of like the I'm Feeling Lucky button on Google. A website pops up that contains the same kinds of meta tags that you've entered as your interests, whatever your general area of interest. And they just keep popping up, these websites, one after another. And you can, of course, bookmark the ones that are cool, or there's a way within Stumble Upon to note a favorite site. And if you keep your interests fairly narrow, then the sites that come up are going to be really relevant, and maybe you never would have found it on Google because it would have been buried on the 37th page or something. It's pretty cool, a pretty cool little device for people who like to explore. That's really what it is, exploring yourself with Stumble Upon.
Google's kind of like the direct route right to the thing, and Stumble Upon's like taking the scenic route. And like you might find something cool along the way.
It's a throw of the dice.
And sometimes the best way to get from here to there is to go straight there. And other times it's much better to take the scenic route, to just take your time and smell the roses and check things out on the way. life is not about going at the same pace all the time. Sometimes there's times to go slow. Sometimes there's times to go fast. Sometimes there's times to just kick it into high gear. And that's what we're talking about in setting these new peaks.
It's like if you could have one of those beam me up Scotty machines.
I want one.
And you could set it to go any place, but there was this one position called random, or I feel lucky. That's what Stumble Upon is like. You don't know where. You know it's going to be one of your interests, but you don't know where.
You're not going to end up in a firefight in Libya, but you're going to end up someplace interesting.
Hey, thanks for being with us. Join us next week as we continue our premium audio series, Finding Yourself in Paradise. Be gentle, love life, and take care of each other. For Steve Snyder, this is Michael Benner. Aloha from Maui.